Perfect. So my name's Shayne. I am the developer experience lead at Shopify. We're based in Ottawa, Canada, so a long way away. And yeah, I lead our developer experience efforts where we try to make developing on the platform as amazing as possible for all our developers. So I'm here today to talk about how we support more than 80 endpoints, a ton of libraries, and a half dozen SDKs with a team of 5. So yeah, my name's Shayne. So first question that some people might have is actually, what is Shopify? So this is Shopify. So this is the back end. Shopify is the e-commerce platform that's powering the online stores of people like Red Bull, Wikipedia, Budweiser, Kylie Jenner, Kanye West, and more than 300,000 others. So this is generally what a Shopify storefront is going to look like. So as a brand, you can see here, I mean, this is Dodo Case's online store, and generally Shopify is invisible to the consumer here. So, our job is to make merchants look their very best in every interaction that they have with their customers. We're mostly invisible as a brand, but there is a very large percentage chance that if you do a lot of shopping online, you've probably actually bought something from a Shopify store. So Shopify was founded in 2006 by Toby Luque. He started it originally to sell snowboards on his own online store. So he, wanted to sell snowboards, but there wasn't really any platform out there that allowed him to do it in a way that he really liked. So he decided to build his own. And eventually what ended up becoming pretty apparent was actually that the software was the real product here and not selling snowboards. So the first Shopify employees started getting hired about 4 years later in 2010. And then by 2013, we'd moved to an office where we had about 200 employees. And now today, we're in a 20,000 square meter office and have about 2,000 employees globally. So this amount of growth hasn't been super easy to support from an API perspective. So right now we have over 300,000 merchants on the platform. In Q2 of 2016, we did 3.4 billion in GMV, and our average year-over-year GMV growth since 2012 is 122%. Every hour, we do about 20 million API actions, which is a lot, and it equals out to almost 200 billion for the year for API actions. So we've been growing a lot. So with all of these API actions, these are coming into, like I mentioned, about 80 documented public endpoints. So there's a lot of breadth to what we cover. There's depth, though, too. So for example, our shipping endpoints attempt to cover the majority of use cases for the multi-billion-dollar shipping industry. So that's a pretty, there's a lot of depth to those endpoints, and those are only 5 of the endpoints that we have on the whole platform. So I've made some mistakes in my time as developer experience lead, so I'm going to share a few of those with everyone today in the hopes that as your platforms scale, you will hopefully not make these same mistakes. So. And actually, this is just another graph here. So the red graph here is a Google trend for the popularity of the search term e-commerce over time globally. And then the blue line is the search term for Shopify. So Shopify, actually, as a search term on Google, is now more popular than people searching for just e-commerce, which is pretty cool. So my first mistake that I made in developer experience when supporting our APIs was actually trying to help everyone over email. So that sounds a bit ridiculous when you look at the scale of what Shopify now is. But when I first started, Shopify was a lot smaller. We only had 30,000 stores. So it was a little bit more reasonable. I started in support and really grew to love the type of one-to-one interactions that I had with people when I was working in support. Being helpful feels really good. So when I moved over to developer experience, I kind of carried that over. So I was helping people with small integrations for mom and pop shops, but then I was also helping people like Avalara and PayPal integrate with Shopify for those integrations. And when helping developers, there's a lot of incomplete information, lack of context, miscommunication sometimes with people. So it's really difficult to help people one person at a time, and you're actually missing out on some really great opportunities. I ended up being just the proverbial hamster running in my wheel. And like white glove support is always going to be required on some level, but unless you're able to create accelerating returns from the work that you're doing, you're going to have to scale in parallel with the size of your developer community, and you're almost going to have to build like a support organization within your developer or your internal developer community, which is difficult. So anyway, so that didn't work, helping people over email. So the next idea that we had came from Stack Overflow. So Stack is an interesting place. People go with questions, they come out with answers, and these answers are almost exclusively provided by the community. So, and then they're subsequently archived indefinitely. So it seemed kind of like a magical solution, right? Like if we just build a community, they'll answer all their own questions and we'll save a ton of money, and it sounds awesome. So what we started doing was referring the majority of developers to our forums. So this is what our forums look like. This is obviously a very zoomed in version. But yeah, so anytime the developers would come to us with questions about how it is that they use our API, we would refer them to the forums. So fast forward a few months, we then turn up in this situation where half of all the posts on our forums are actually unanswered, and frontline support staff are sending all the developer questions that they get to the forums, which ended up being about 1,800 questions every month, and just there was a ton of unanswered questions, and actually things were probably worse than they were before when I was just emailing people individually, so that didn't really work either. So that was my second mistake. If you build it, they will come. Only really applies to cheesy 80s sports dramas. It does not actually apply to developer communities. Just because you have one doesn't mean people are actually going to participate. So after that, we thought, okay, well, Stack Overflow has updates, it has badging. Maybe that's the reason that people actually don't want to participate right now. So we'll just add badges, and we'll add upvotes, and then it's great, and everyone's going to participate. So people actually didn't care about the badges or the upvotes, really. So upvotes did help us identify which parts of the product people were most likely to, or most looking to see added, new endpoints and things like that. So that was moderately useful. But from a support standpoint, it was, to be honest, a total failure. There was no increase in engagement from user badging, and there wasn't any increase in engagement from upvotes and downvotes either. So, okay, so what have I tried so far? So number one was one-to-one support. Number two was pushing all support to the community. Number three was incentivizing our community to hopefully get them to support each other, and none of that actually worked. So the answer to this kind of came from an unexpected place. So this is an Instant Pot. Does anyone have an Instant Pot by any chance? Maybe not as popular in Europe as it is in North America. Okay, so this is a pressure cooker. It makes yogurt. It's a saute pan. It does tons of stuff. It's really cool. People love them. So this is their online community. So this is just a pressure cooker, right? But this online community has 136,000 members. They have 100% answer rate. So scrolling back between like the last 2 months was my sample size, and every single one of the posts that they put there was answered. It only takes minutes for people to respond to questions that are posted there. They do support, sales, and retention, all exactly within the community. There was one person who posted saying they were looking to get rid of their Instant Pot, and there were 200 people that responded telling them why they shouldn't get rid of their Instant Pot. So, like, this is crazy. This picture right here is of an Instant Pot in Algonquin Park. So Algonquin Park is a campground in Canada, very remote. You're hundreds of kilometers away from the nearest source of electricity. These people brought a generator so that they could run their Instant Pot in the wilderness. Like, people love this product, right? So our idea was the fact that people love posting here because they know that they're going to get a response. They know that they're going to be able to interact with other people in the community. So what we decided to do was jumpstart our own community by posting ourselves in our forums and really getting involved in all the kind of the threads that people are within. So fast forward a few months, we ended up having, just to kind of clarify that a little bit, we started doing maybe like 200 posts a month or 150 posts a month within our own forums, trying to answer the majority of questions that we could. And then even when sometimes things were already answered, we'd jump in and just kind of chat with our community. So what that ended up doing was it created a 48% activity increase from developers. We added 1,165 new app developers in the last 2 quarters. And yet, even though we added 1,165 new app developers, our total amount of support inquiries went down by 13% because all of the people were actually talking in the community and supporting each other. Our one-touch issue resolution with people who had questions about our API also went up by 45%, which means the large majority of the time that people had support questions, we were answering their questions right away. So they didn't need to keep on emailing us back. So this had a bit of an unexpected side effect, everyone talking about the product. So the product wasn't perfect, and now that people are talking to each other about it a lot more, it's starting to expose a lot of the edge cases and the kind of counterintuitive nuances of the API. So what we needed to do was we needed to start fixing documentation and actually fixing the product at kind of the root. So Shopify keeps all of our tech designs for upcoming releases in a specific GitHub repo. So tracking new tech design proposals is actually doable. So all of the new products that are coming out, we can subscribe to one specific repo, see everything that's coming out, and then our team can make sure that through this build, launch, and tweak phase that we're thinking about API first, because we're involved right at the start. So one common thing to all teams at Shopify is that everyone wants to release the best possible product. So that could be an API, that could be a new mobile experience, a new feature for the platform. It could be a VR shopping experience. But everyone really wants to release the best product. So we knew that it was going to be impossible for us to not actually just be involved in this build, launch, and tweak, but to be involved right from the start. So idea, think, explore, build, launch, and tweak. So at this phase right here is where we really want to be in, is during those initial tech design documents. So that was a little bit difficult, being from outside the R&D organization, doing mostly caring about developer experience and doing the support. So what we started doing was pitching ourselves as a kind of internal agency to the other product teams within Shopify. So what we would say is, okay, so I know you want to release this new API, and you want this to be the best possible product before it goes out to the world. What we can do is once the tech design goes out, we can take this, package it up, add some NDAs, send this out to a small subset of developers that we select, and then we can get their feedback on it. We get that feedback back, give it back to the developers, and then you can tell us, or we can tell you, this is what people want. This is what people actually want from this endpoint, and we can kind of nip the support in the bud. So we no longer have to worry about just supporting after the fact and trying to tweak an API that's already launched, because that's obviously a lot more difficult. So we tried a bunch of different ways to get feedback. So just kind of, if anyone else wants to try this, just what's kind of worked for us and what hasn't. So getting feedback, the best way that we found was actually to use a Google Docs. So we tried dedicated forums, we tried a Slack channel, we just tried getting stuff over email, proprietary kind of like lockdown systems, or we would share different files securely with people. But Google Docs actually ended up being the best. So having people be able to comment on changes that they'd like to see in a tech document directly in line, and then talk to each other, really built on the community aspect. In email, we found that people couldn't really get the community aspect because of BCCs. In Slack, it's difficult to have enough context when like you're talking about something and then you want to go back to it later. So yeah, so once we get this feedback, we feed it back into our regular product cycle. Yeah, and we found that that's really useful. So the last thing that I want to talk about is documentation. Is anyone familiar with the Library of Babel? No? Yeah? Okay, a few people. Okay, so the Library of Babel, and I don't have much time here, so I'm going to try to make this as succinct as possible, but The Library of Babel is a fictional universe that has all possible permutations of a 410-page book using all letters in the English language. So obviously there's a lot of books in this fictional universe. Now there is a non-zero chance that walking up to any book in this library and picking it off the shelf will give you a full reading of your past, present, and future, right? That's a non-zero chance, since all of these are random letters. Now, obviously, even though it's non-zero, there actually aren't enough atoms in the universe to be able to show how big the number would be, how low the chance would be that you'd actually pick that book. And the same really applies to your documentation. This is kind of a bit of a stretch, but no matter how good your documentation is, it can have all the knowledge in the world, but if it's not easy for people to find, then it's not going to be of much use. So a great example to kind of highlight this on Shopify are these two pages that we have. So this one's the embedded app SDK, which allows you to create an embedded app within the Shopify admin. So this is expectedly one of our most popular docs that we have. And the next one is this. So this is the hosted payments SDK. So this allows you to integrate your hosted payment page onto Shopify's checkout. Now, this is actually a beta program. So this isn't something that's publicly archived. And like, if you search this on Google, you'll never find it because it's not publicly indexed. This one is, and it's one of our most popular documents. Now, the hosted payments SDK, the way that you find this document right now is through a specific link on the GitHub repo of the example app, where you're building something on the hosted payment SDK. And because of that, even though people aren't coming through our biggest direct acquisition channel of Google, it actually has 2.5 times more views because people are able to find the information they need in context. So as soon as they want that information, it's being presented to them rather than them having to go to Google and search for it, and it's all very messy. So it really removes a lot of the friction when you have documentation links and things like that directly when people need them. So, quick recap, talking about what I talked about today. So one-on-one support is effective, but it's not scalable, especially as your platform continues to grow. Adding to a user count isn't building a community. If you build it, they will come, only applies to cheesy 80s sports dramas. Just having a community is not enough for people to support each other. Gamification is hard. It's not a quick fix. There's a lot of people out there that are actually doing gamification well, and in my opinion, it's not really worth reinventing the wheel there. There's a lot of communities that do this really well. Being heavily involved in your own community can inspire action from other participants. So this is where we saw the increase of 46% in engagement that we had, and a huge boost in the number of users in our community. And the last point, the most effective support is proactive. So designing a product with the third-party developer community in mind, right from the idea phase, gathering feedback, feeding it back into the product is by far the best way to support your product. So I am on Twitter at @ShayParm. I just created this account because the PR team made me before I came here. If anybody has any questions, I will definitely notice because I only have 8 followers. So if you follow me, I'll follow you back, and you can DM me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about developer experience. Thank you.